Testing? Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us today. And on behalf of the Spruce Creek High School Hawk Battalion, we would like to thank Congressman Michael Waltz and his entire staff for selecting our school, Spruce Creek High School, for this venue today. Can you please join me in a round of applause for Congressman Michael Waltz?
Take seats. Over me? Yes. All right, you want me up there? You want me down? Wherever you want to go, sir. All right. It's a wireless mic, so you won't walk down. All right, let's go up here. Listen, well, thanks so much. What an honor to be here with you all, and I have to start out by saying, go Hawks. There you go. Right? You know, I do a little bit better. Why don't we just take this? I know, got to do push-ups. So I'm honored to be here, and I'm honored to talk to all of you. One of the things I want to talk to you today is about this journey that you all are stepping into and have stepped up for in joining ROTC, and ostensibly, hopefully, joining the military and stepping into a life of service. You know, I'm the first, really honored to be the first Green Beret that was elected to Congress. First ever. There's been 4 Navy SEALs. There's only been 1 of us, so I just tell the SEALs all the time that it takes 4 of them to equal 1 of us, and go Army, and deal with it. But no, in all seriousness, you'll never hear me though. I give my colleague Dan Crenshaw, the guy with the eye patch, you may have seen him, Saturday Night Live made fun of him, but then he got on there and did a great job of making fun of Saturday Night Live. But I'll give the Navy a hard time all day long, but I'll never give the Air Force a hard time. So in 2 situations, I was completely surrounded. We had taken multiple casualties in Afghanistan, and I looked up and said, okay, God, I guess this is where you're going to take me. This is where it's all going to end for me, at least on this earth. And on one occasion, I looked up and saw an A-10 USAF painted on the wings, United States Air Force, coming in and bringing all kinds of heat on the enemy. In another case, it was an AC-130 that came in and literally saved me and my entire Special Forces team's lives. So I tell my Air Force friends all the time that they can stay in whatever kind of hotel they want. They can stay at the Ritz-Carlton or whatever, but you'll never hear me making an Air Force joke because they truly saved my life. Look, we love what we do. I love what I've done in the Army. I'm going on 24 years now. I'm still going in the National Guard. Just jumped out of a perfectly good airplane 2 months ago. And still going, but it's the families that really bear the brunt of our service. And if you guys and gals continue to serve, your families will bear the brunt of yours. You're going to have a lot of worried moms. My mother, every time I deployed, didn't watch the news for an entire year because she was petrified of that knock on the door that could come if the worst happens to you overseas. But you know what? You're doing what you trained for. You're doing what you were meant to do. It's the families, on the other hand, that bear the brunt of that service. And that's why in Congress, the first thing that I've done is try to take care of the families through some really good legislation, particularly the families of the fallen. So to all the families that I'm looking around and seeing, thank you in advance. And thank your parents in advance, and thank your brothers and sisters and everyone else that will be worried about you as you progress past ROTC into service. It truly is a noble calling. So I'm going to talk to you about 3 different things today, and then about national service. The first is, as you go through ROTC, And as you go through, one day to be a commission, whether you enlist and you become a non-commissioned officer or whether you become an officer, take this time now to learn about yourself. So many people focus on leadership and how you lead others. I think the real essence of a great leader is learning about yourself and really being honest with yourself about your own strengths and your own weaknesses. This really kind of came to light for me when I went through Ranger School. Does everybody here know what Ranger School is? All right. So that's the people call it the Army's premier tactics school, infantry tactics and light infantry tactics, but really what it is about leadership. And it tests you by starving you, by depriving you of sleep, by putting you in the coldest, wettest, most miserable conditions that you can possibly be in. And you're surrounded by everybody else that is cold and miserable and literally stumbling around because they haven't slept in days and weeks. And then they say, you know what, you're in charge. Go accomplish the mission. Get over those 2 mountains, across that stream, conduct an ambush to standard, and lead. And you really find out about yourself in those situations. I was asked in an interview one time, later on in a job interview, like, what's the worst thing you've ever done? Be honest, what's the worst thing you've ever done? And it kind of caught me off guard. And I thought about back to Ranger School, and I'm going to admit something here that I'm still a little embarrassed of, but it's something about being honest with yourself. And that my battle buddy and I were going weeks and days and weeks with very little food. And all day long, multiple days over this patrol, my battle buddy was going on and on and on about one of these MRE cookie bars. That's all he talked about, is this MRE cookie bar. Well, there we are, middle of the night, on guard duty, and we're trading off, half an hour on, half an hour off, trying to just get a little bit of sleep. And all I remember is looking down. I mean, I was delirious at this point, and seeing this brownie cookie bar down in our foxhole. And that's all I remember. The next thing I remember is the next morning, is where it stand to, my battle buddy's in tears, ripping his gear apart, looking for this cookie bar, and all he found was a wrapper down at the bottom of the foxhole. Now, I got to tell you, I honestly don't remember what happened to that cookie bar, but we all know what happened to that cookie bar, right? And to this day, I will never. I don't remember his face. I remember his name because we moved on to another phase. But I would never forget him shaking out his gear. I mean, literally having a meltdown for that cookie bar. We laughed, but I crossed the line there, right? That was the worst of me. Whether you're in a survival situation or whether you're in combat, I knew that when it came down to it, that I crossed the line. And actually in combat, that could be a very serious line. I know my weakness. And that's what I encourage you all to do. Be honest with yourself about your weaknesses. Be honest with yourself about your limitations. Because in the worst of worst situations, you won't be able to step up and be the best leader you can be until you have those situations. And so I can't remember what this guy looks like, but I swear every time I tell this story, I'm waiting on somebody to jump up out of the crowd and go, Waltz, I knew it was you all those years ago, and come up and probably punch me in the face. But so that's one. The other one is, you're going to be in an environment that's all about rules. It's about regulations, it's about discipline, and that's important. That's incredibly important. And as leaders, you'll be enforcing that discipline. But I think the best leaders understand the difference between rules and regulations that cannot be crossed, and then those that can be bent a little bit to accomplish a higher goal or a higher calling. And that takes a level of maturity, and it takes a level of experience to know when to do that. Another quick story was the difference of what Green Berets do from SEALs and Rangers and the others. Those guys are great at finding our enemies, taking care of business. What we do is we learn local culture, language, the kind of what we call human terrain. We embed with other militaries or tribes or guerrillas, And it'll only be a few of us oftentimes, and then we help our friends take care of our enemies for us, if that makes sense. So in one of my missions, I had one sergeant, a sole sergeant, embedded with French Special Forces, and they were out conducting combat operations in Afghanistan. Well, the French, and part of it's just the French being the French, weren't doing what we wanted them to do. They were all over the place, and I finally recalled the sergeant back. The French were changing out their command team. I called him back and said, hey man, what the heck? You know, you're supposed to be there kind of helping guide them and help them kind of move in line with what the overall American command wanted. And he said, look, I'm a sergeant, and that French colonel won't listen to sergeants. I mean, that's just how the French, they only listen to officers. They won't listen to me. The French soldiers are great, but that colonel's not going to listen to me. Well, that guy was leaving Afghanistan. They were having a new colonel come in. So I said, you know what, follow me. And we marched down to the little store, the base store that provided uniforms and ranks and all of that stuff out in Afghanistan on the main base. And we looked down the line, and I grabbed some captain bars, took off his sergeant bars, put on the captain bars, said, go introduce yourself as a captain to that new colonel, and now he'll listen to you. Now, I could have gotten in a lot of trouble for that, right? But that was a battlefield promotion to get the job done. And when I tell you that story in the sense of sometimes you got to push to the limit to get the job done. And you have to know as leaders and have the maturity to know certain rules, ethics, morals. There are certain lines you never break. But then there's other ones that you can push. And then the last thing I'll leave you with is be a bottoms-up leader. And what do I mean by that? So when if you all take over your platoon, you take over your squad as an NCO, one day you become a colonel, you become a general, like General Audino, I lost you there. You're going to increasingly lead, you become a CEO, you're going to increasingly lead larger and larger organizations. But particularly in the military, when you're leading soldiers, when you're leading Marines, sailors, they're not there for you. You're there for them, right? Be a bottoms-up leader. And what I mean by that is you are there to provide guidance, to provide leadership, to provide policies, to provide resources. They're not there to serve you. You're there to serve them. And if there's anything, years from now, you're going to think, I remember some congressman talking to me when I was in ROTC. I don't remember that guy's name. If there's anything you remember from this, because it was told to me when I was going through Virginia Military Institute, to be a bottoms-up leader. And as long as you have your people, your soldiers, as your focus, you can never go wrong. And so I end every meeting now, even as a congressman, before when I was a CEO and I'm still a colonel in the reserves, with my team, with what can I do for you? How can I be more helpful for you to accomplish your mission? Tuck that away in your brain somewhere, and when you're in charge, I can't tell you how much your soldiers will appreciate that. It's not, normally they're all taking notes for how to follow up for what you want. No, you take notes to follow up for what they need from you as a leader. So look, all of these things, I'll stop in a second and open it up to questions, which I think is usually more useful at your time. All of these things are things that you learn in ROTC and you'll learn in your military career. You're going to learn leadership, you'll learn followership, you'll learn teamwork, and most importantly, you're going to learn to do it with people that don't have the same background as you, that don't look like you, that don't act like you. And that's the beauty of service. Is one, you learn all of those things, but then two, you're doing it with people that aren't necessarily like you. I think that's what we got away from in the draft. Back in the day, everybody, and we all know, right? Everybody was forced together at 18 years old. And whether you were from downtown Detroit or North Florida or West Georgia, a farm boy or a Jewish kid from Brooklyn, it didn't matter. You're all forced together, usually with a drill sergeant's boot in your rear to help you get over your differences for a higher calling, for a higher mission. So one of the things that I'm pushing in terms of legislation is getting us back to national service. and getting us back to that goodness that we had before. But look, I want to commend you all for stepping up to serve. Whether you go into the military or not, there's all kinds of ways to serve. You don't have to wear a uniform to serve. You can do inner city tutoring. You can help the elderly. You can do national parks, Peace Corps, our intelligence community or State Department, local law enforcement, serving as a teacher or an administrator. But living a life of service and significance is far, far more rewarding than living one of luxury. It really is. And when you're looking back on your life, when you're sitting in that rocking chair looking back, I think you will be much more rewarded from having lived one of service and living one as truly as what I call servant leaders. So with that, I will stop. You all are inspiring me by being here, and thank you again for stepping up to serve. So many of your friends aren't and should be, and if I have it my way, we all will be once again. The Israelis do it mandatory. What we have in our bill is going to incentivize it with basically community college being covered or in-state tuition for anyone who serves all over the country. I'm really excited about it, and I look forward to seeing you all somewhere in the future. I look forward to seeing you all. If stay in touch with Miss Sue Bauer if you want to apply to one of the military academies and apply for a nomination. She's the quarterback for that whole process. And look forward to seeing you all in the future. Okay, any questions? I can't quite see with the spotlights here. Yeah, right there in the center. Yeah, you got it. Go ahead and stand up and introduce yourself and throw that command voice out there.
What is the day in your life for you?
A day in the life?
Yes, sir.
Good question. It's never the same day. The great thing about this job is literally in any given, say, 2 or 3 hours, I'm dealing with clean water issues, e-cigarettes, opioids, Russian submarines and what they're doing to surge into the Atlantic and the Pacific, the new Space Force, reforms, the Army has a new thing called the Army Futures Command, which is looking at new technologies and AI and cyber and others. So it is literally never a dull moment. But really, I break it down. You have your legislative piece, you have your district focus, and I have a fantastic team here in the district in 3 offices. So if someone needs help with Social Security, with veterans benefits, with the immigration, and the federal government is such a labyrinth. My team here helps them work through that, and that's really important. I think often overlooked. We're not spending every day reforming healthcare or reforming immigration. We're helping people here in the district day in and day out. And then the final piece is, you have politics, right? So in the House of Representatives, we run for election or re-election every 2 years. So you're either running for office, just got done running for office, or getting ready to run for office, one way or another. But one of those things usually eats up a good part of the day. Who else? Anybody else?
Pass the microphone, guys.
I'm good at Connor Fiction. And I was wondering what inspired you to join the Army?
Great question. I have a family of military. They're all Navy, so they're still mad at me that I broke ranks. They're all Navy enlisted. Father, grandfather, uncles, and I defected and became the black sheep. But I was always fascinated with the amazing experiment that is our republic in terms of how it governs, how our founding fathers, came up with this system that has, I think, proven to be the most exceptional system in the world, in world history. And defending that and being a part of American leadership around the world was something I was always attracted to. Oops, I didn't see that, sorry. and wanted to be a part of it. The Army specifically, I wanted to lead. Right, I wanted to be with soldiers. I grew up admiring MacArthur and Patton and so many others of great American leaders throughout history that to follow in their footsteps would truly be an honor. And so I took the leap, and proud I did it. Like I said, about to hit 24 years. I haven't quite caught up with the general yet, but I'm working on it. Oh, sorry, I'll hit the other side next time. Yeah.
I'm good. I want to ask, how does it feel knowing that you represent so many people?
So every representative represents, we're population-based, right? So we hover between 800,000 to 1 million people that we represent. So if you have a district that's, say, in an inner city, like New York or Miami, geographically it's pretty small because the population is very compact. If you have one that's more rural, very spread out. And every 10 years we have a census because the population is never static. Right now, Florida's gaining 1,000 people a day. That redraws those lines. What I love about it's a double-edged sword. What I love about it is you get a wide variety. I mean, everybody has opinions and everybody has their views. And your job, even though we have a two-party system, you're in one party or the other, is to represent everyone the best you can. And it's a constant kind of mental back and forth between what you think is best and then representing your district and what they think is best. And that's why coming and the day-to-day job is in Washington, but getting back here as much as possible and listening to what people have to say, listening to what they want you to do is critical, and it's important, and it's just an honor. It's an honor to do it. I mean, that was a long answer. Short answer is every day that I pull up to the Capitol, and I've told my team this in Washington as well, if you don't pull up and kind of take a deep breath when you're looking at that building and appreciate what we're doing, if you just kind of are shrugging your shoulders or getting cynical about it, it's time to move on. And that's for me and for them. All right, we'll go to this side.
My name's Ian Schultz. What's the new Space Force going to be like?
I'm so glad you asked that question. I'm really excited about it. It was the first piece of legislation I introduced. So I think a lot of people, there's a misconception that we're training space marines or space rangers that are going to be running around the moon or Mars. That's maybe one day will be the case because the Chinese are working towards putting a military base on the moon. They call it a research station, but it'll be manned by Chinese military soldiers. So we know what that's really about. Look, at the end of the day, think of it this way. The Air Force was created out of the Army, right? It used to be the Army Air Corps, and then it became the Air Force post-World War II because we needed a branch of the armed forces dedicated to dominating air power, and we did for the 20th century. Now we need a branch dedicated to dominating space power for the 21st century. That is now the ultimate high ground. Two reasons. One, the entire global economy is dependent on the constellation, the satellites, and other things that are up in space. Our banking, our agriculture, our weather, our telecommunications, GPS, how I got here today, all of those things are now dependent on space. Our entire military, how we project force around the globe, is dependent on space. Well, our adversaries know that. The Chinese in particular know that. And they have dramatically increased their investments on weapons, everything from lasers to jammers to cyber to missiles that can take that infrastructure down. So we need a new branch of the military dedicated to protecting it and also dedicated to putting their infrastructure at risk. That's how deterrence works. So one day, we now have the Space Force. We now have a new Chief of Space Operations. It's basically going to migrate airmen and sailors and soldiers from the other services over to the Space Force. But what it really does is it gives them an equal seat at the Pentagon. When you're talking budgets and when you have this back and forth over who gets priority for what, it gives them an equal seat. And that's what's really excited about. Now, one day, they may get their own space academy, which means they're gonna have space cadets, right? Nobody ever laughs at that joke. Anyway, we'll see. Right now, they're gonna still be kind of tucked up under the Air Force, but their own branch, like the Marine Corps is to the Navy. Sure, see you right there in the center? Yeah. Gotta belt it out, man.
Cadet Derek, what countries have you gone to and which was your favorite?
Say again?
What countries have you gone to and which was your favorite?
Which countries have I gone to and which are my favorite? Yeah? Oh my gosh. All over West Africa, Senegal, Nigeria, all over the Middle East, UAE, Saudi, Bahrain, Kuwait, Iraq, of course, and then South Asia in Afghanistan, and that's where I did my combat tours, Pakistan, India. I mean, the fascinating thing, what I love about our special operations is you have Rangers, SEALs, and Green Berets, and Air Force special operators in 60 to 70 countries on any given day, right now as we speak. Everywhere from 2 men or women teams, small teams that might be scouting out some kind of critical infrastructure, working out of the embassy or doing liaison duties, to full-blown special operations task forces like we have in Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq. It really runs the full spectrum. But you are doing everything from building schools to scouting out their critical infrastructure, to establishing relationships from tribes, to generals, to being prepared, if called upon, to do a raid like we did when we took out al-Baghdadi, or when our drone operators just took out the Iranian General Soleimani. So you really run the full spectrum. I can't tell you I have a favorite. I mean, look, my favorite is actually now being at home. I have a 16-year-old daughter and not traveling as much, so and watching football whenever I can. But look, I've been all over the world. I have a special place in my heart for places in Africa. It is just truly a majestic place, and we talk about it too often like it's one country. It's not. It's 64 countries, and every region is different, unique. But that's just me, and I encourage you, whether you join the military or not, see the world. And I have to tell you, if you ever think we have it bad here, go live in places in the second and third world. I mean, right now, just in our hemisphere, in Haiti, the entire healthcare system is crumbling. They're really in a bad place. And so I tell people all the time, if you think we have it bad here, travel a bit, and you'll kiss the ground when you land back in the United States, and it'll give you a perspective of how good we have it. I don't know how much more time we have. I can keep going. I'll wear you out before you wear me out, I promise. Yes, sir?
Could you tell us what it meant to you to come to the operator after 75th year?
Thank you for asking. So I was able to, a congressional delegation went to Normandy. It was the 75th anniversary of D-Day. And I was able to break away from the delegation, put on a World War II vintage uniform, met up with some veterans, and we jumped out of an 81-year-old aircraft over St. Mary Glees, which is where the 82nd Airborne jumped in World War II, June 5th, 1944. And I was able to jump with a 97-year-old paratrooper who had only jumped once before in his life, and that was in D-Day. This was the second time ever, and he was grinning from ear to ear all the way down to the ground. It was really special. And the reaction to the French people was just phenomenal. You would have thought D-Day had happened last week. You really would. I mean, there were hand-painted banners, thank you for our freedom, welcome to our liberators, American flags everywhere, thousands and thousands of people out on the drop zone. It was the closest I'll ever get to feeling like a rock star, because they were just so thankful and so celebratory. It was there's not much that really gets me that kind of wound up and emotional, and that was just an emotional and special thing. So the aircraft was original, the uniforms were original, but the parachutes were new. We used modern parachutes, we did not use original. And then to do it with an original paratrooper who had jumped 75 years ago was just incredible. But thanks for asking, that was a special day. Airborne.
One more.
Any more?
My name is Gary Joseph Scarborough. I always have a question. After making a tough decision, how do you know where to go from next? Or what happens next after such a tough decision?
In what sense? And just making a tough decision in any sense?
Making a tough decision that had a direct effect on you or people around you.
Oh, wow. Well, I'll tell you, regardless of the decision, again, this is, so a couple of things lead into that so before you make that tough decision. One is, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't get into, there's so many people, I see it in Washington all the time, where they have so much ego. Everyone wants to act like they know everything. You don't, no one does. So don't be afraid to surround yourself, and the greatest leaders that I've admired surround themselves with people that are a lot smarter than them. So I try to do the same thing, and if you meet my team, you'll see that they're a lot smarter than I am, and they're experts at what they do. And don't be afraid to rely on them. In fact, you should rely on them. Take it all in, get all the information that you can. At the end of the day, though, as the leader, you got to make that call. But when you make it, own it. And take responsibility for the consequences. And sometimes, I wear a bracelet here for Staff Sergeant Matt Pacino. And just very quickly, I'll tell you, in 2009, when Sergeant Pacino was killed, the Taliban switched tactics on us. They were hitting us with roadside bombs, but they were setting them off with remote control devices. And we put jammers in that were defeating the remote control devices, so they switched tactics and went kind of old school and went to tripwires. And it really shut down a lot of what our forces were doing. I had one very aggressive special forces team who said, we're going to keep getting after the bad guys, and Staff Sergeant Pacino volunteered. He sought my permission to do it, but he volunteered to go out in front of our vehicles, in front of our convoy, on a motorcycle. So you have a whole armored vehicle convoy that's meant to partially withstand these blasts, but he was out front on a motorcycle so that he could be close to the ground and he could see these tripwires and stop the convoy, disarm them. And the enemy didn't know what to do with it because we were still, they thought, it was going to stop us. It didn't. Well, I talked to Matt before one of these missions and said, why do you keep volunteering to do this? And he looked back at me and he said, look, sir, if we can't let them shut us down, and if they get us, at least they'll only get me and not 5 of my Green Berets, my fellow soldiers, and the vehicle behind me. That's what he was willing to do. That's the sacrifice he was willing to make. And I made the decision to allow him to do that. Well, one night he missed one. And he's no longer with us. I have to own that. I live with that every day. I wake up thinking about him. And I still see his family every year, and I have to own that decision. And I weighed out the pros and cons of it. I made it. I allowed him to do it. And I authorized that mission that night where he was killed. And that's something, that's just something you have to live with. But I see too many people try to scapegoat others when they have to make tough decisions and they don't go the way that they want. I don't know, that was probably a lot longer answer to your question. But step up and own the decisions. Everybody wants to be a great idea or a great product or a great concept has a million followers.
Everyone here that has made this event so nice for my boss. I'm Sue Bauer, and it's my honor and privilege to serve Congressman Michael Waltz for this district. So thank you so much. And I also want to give a little, especially if there's any rising seniors, any juniors right now, now's the time, if you're interested in any of the academies, to go online and apply for the summer seminars. So if there's any juniors right now, raise your hands. And you're interested in an academy, now's the time to apply to the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy, aim at the Coast Guard Academy. So pretty exciting stuff. I also want to recognize, we have a school board member here, Miss Linda Cuthbert. Would you stand, please? Thank you so much. And we want to bring up Denise Dietrich up to the stage. And her family, who can be with her, because she wouldn't be who she is without her family, her husband and her son, who's a student at Atlantic High School. Yeah, yes. Denise is one of those people who has been assistant to the superintendents of 6 or 7 soups. 7, yes. So I worked with Denise for over 21 years, but she has 47 years worth of administrative assistance for me. She has never told me no. Whenever I had anyone to contact regarding our service academies, getting the word out, organizing anything, Denise has never told me no. So thank you, Denise. I honor your service. Yes, sir.
So we have here a certificate of special congressional recognition. I am just blown away and touched by your service. That's just really incredible. So I would love for you to have that. And then I also have, does everybody here know what the challenge coins, unit coins are? Whoa. All right, so I have a congressional challenge coin that I would love for you to have. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thank you.
We need to get more?
Yes, no. Yeah, sure.
Next, we'd like to have Mr. Bitzer and his son to come to the stage, please.
Want to do that down here?
Yeah, let's do it down there.
Okay, ready?
Okay, awesome.
Yes, sir.
Attention to orders.
Battalion, attention!
The Secretary of the Army has reposed special trust and confidence in the patriotism, valor, fidelity, and professional excellence of Corporal Peter Bitzer. In view of these qualities and his demonstrated leadership potential and dedicated service to the United States Army, he is therefore promoted to the rank of Sergeant E5. Effective date, 21 January 1952.
Why don't we get a picture? Why don't you show off those sergeant stripes right there? Yeah, there we go. Turn sideways. remember that duck pen? For honorable discharge. So this is in World War II, when you had an honorable discharge, you were given a lapel pin. It's an eagle in a wreath, but everybody thought it looked like a duck, so they called it the duck pin. That showed that you had served honorably, and thank you for your lifetime of service. Wear that. And then final thing I have for you is a copy of my book called Warrior Diplomat. I'd love for you to have that. I have inside here, so the motto, everybody knows Semper Fi, right? Always from Marine Corps. Motto of the Green Beret is De Oppresso Libere, to free the oppressed. And I'm on a mission to make it as popular as Semper Fi. But there you go, sir. I'd be honored for you to have it. All right, Sergeant. Yes, sir, I appreciate it. Better late than never, right? Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, Sergeant. No. You're the sergeant of honor right now.
I would much rather than stop there
So I'm a BMI grad. I'm not going to hold that against you. All right. Don't hold it against me. All right. Thank you so much, Sergeant. I appreciate it. All right. God bless you. Looking good.
Hey, is that the pink hair regulation?
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Sergeant. Okay, I don't know. Sue, is that? What's that? Oh, photos. Okay, with the cadets? Great. Happy to.
Cadets, on your feet. Let's get them up on the stage. Camera.
Go to the back.
That was your guidance. Go to the back. Face this way.
Everyone's a picture there.
Save up.
It's a big donor.
Make it off right there. Come next.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jim.
Hey, listen. Somebody, anybody from the chain of command. Both up.